Welcome, fellow navigators. Forget the noise. True intelligence isn't about filling every silence. It's about listening to the symphony within it. You've probably been there, right? Counted out, dismissed, maybe even laughed at because folks thought you were missing something. But what if I told you that their misunderstanding was actually your superpower? Truth is, some of the smartest people I know don't go around trying to impress anyone. They're too busy observing, learning, and piecing together the puzzle that everyone else is too loud to even see. While others were busy showing off, you were quietly collecting data. Every snide remark, every half-hearted compliment, every calculated slight. They might have thought you didn't notice, but it all went into the vault. Now the truth is coming out, and the look on their face is priceless. It's like watching someone realize the quiet artist in the corner is about to unveil a masterpiece that will redefine the entire gallery. So let's dive into why that quiet intelligence of yours is not just underestimated, but seriously potent. We'll have a few laughs along the way because honestly, seeing their jaws drop is a reward in itself. First, it's about seeing, not just memorizing. They get hung up on facts and figures, on tests and trophies. That's where they missed you entirely. It's not about being a walking textbook. It's about perceiving the world around you with a clear, unbiased eye. You have that gift, the ability to see the nuances, the unspoken truths, the details that everyone else brushes aside. It's why you've been underestimated for so long. While they were focused on gathering information, you were gathering truth. There's a world of difference. Most folks swim in the shallows of information, repeating what they hear, adopting the beliefs of their tribe, and feeling proud of their ability to recall names and dates. But you're diving deep. You don't just absorb. You process, you dissect, you analyze. You strip away the superficial layers and ask the hard questions. That's why when everyone else is being fooled by appearances, you're 3 steps ahead, spotting the cracks in the facade. This perceptive intelligence is unsettling because it can't be controlled. People who crave external validation, grades, praise, promotions are easily led. But you don't need it. It's not about looking smart. It's about seeing clearly. And clarity is dangerous in a world built on illusions. The moment you point out what's really happening, people can't hide behind their masks anymore. Your thought process might even feel mysterious to others. It's as if your mind is connecting dots that they didn't even know existed. A glance, a conversation, a stray comment, and suddenly you're drawing conclusions that leave people speechless. To them, it seems like intuition, a lucky guess, or even arrogance. But it's not. It's the quiet power of a mind that refuses to settle for surface-level explanations. Now they're looking at you differently. They're realizing you weren't slow. You were scanning. You weren't lost. You were decoding. And the very things they dismissed as weaknesses were proof that you were operating on a deeper, sharper, and more powerful level of intelligence than they ever imagined. Second, they were stuck in the system. You were navigating it. They thought intelligence was something you could only prove within the confines of a classroom, something you could stamp with a certificate and seal with a degree. That's where they went wrong. You weren't trapped by the system, they were. They thought you were behind because you didn't play their game, didn't chase their validation. But the truth is you were ahead because you understood something they didn't. The system wasn't designed to create thinkers. It was designed to create followers. And you refused to be a follower. From an early age, you sensed that a lot of what was being taught wasn't about truth, but about control. It was about fitting people into a mold, teaching them just enough to pass tests, but not enough to question the structure around them. While others were busy collecting grades and pleasing authority, you were learning to think for yourself. You knew that knowledge isn't the same as wisdom and intelligence isn't the same as obedience. That's why they misread you. They assumed your resistance meant failure when in fact it meant freedom. While they were being programmed to accept the world at face value, you were learning to decode it. You learned by observing life, by analyzing experiences, by asking the questions the textbooks didn't dare to ask. And because you weren't tied down to one way of thinking, your mind stretched further. That's why you can see beyond the obvious now. That's why you make connections that others, despite their accolades and titles, completely miss. Your intelligence can't be measured by their standards. It can't be graded, it can't be certified, and it can't be bought. That makes them uncomfortable because it strips away the illusions they depend on to feel superior. The truth is, the system gave them a script and they mastered reciting it. You, on the other hand, tore the script apart and wrote your own. That's not ignorance. That's liberation. Now they're forced to recognize that your path didn't stunt you, it sharpened you. The very independence they looked down on is what gave you a perspective they could never gain while staying confined to the box. You didn't reject education, you rejected indoctrination. And that's why your intelligence is more expansive, more powerful, and more undeniable than they ever thought. Third, you dissect lies faster than they can spin them. What unsettled them most about you was never how much you knew, but how quickly you could spot a lie. You dismantle lies faster than they can even construct them, and that is what made people uneasy in your presence. While others get caught up in the performance, the smooth words, and the rehearsed narratives, your mind immediately picks up on the cracks. A slip in tone, a tiny inconsistency in a story, or the way their actions don't align with their words. You catch it instantly. It isn't about being suspicious of everyone. It's simply that your intelligence is wired to detect truth. And anything that doesn't sit right with your intuition gets flagged before the deception even settles. This kind of discernment is rare. Many people are trained to trust appearances because it's easier to believe what's presented to them than to question it. That's why manipulation works so well on the majority. But you can't be fooled for long because your intelligence doesn't take things at face value. You listen to the words, but you also study the intention behind them. You observe the outcome, not just the promise. That's why manipulators get frustrated around you. They can spin their webs, but you're already holding the scissors. You don't even need to argue to expose a lie. Sometimes your silence or the look on your face is enough to let them know you aren't buying it. Other times you'll ask one direct question that pulls the entire thread apart. That one question forces them to backtrack, stutter, or scramble for another story. And in that moment, everyone else can see what you saw from the start. That is the power of your intelligence. It doesn't just protect you. It exposes the deceit that others depend on to survive. The truth is, people underestimated how dangerous it is to underestimate you. They thought they could run circles around you, feed you half-truths, and pull strings behind your back. But every lie they told became a clue in your mental archive. You weren't confused, you were collecting data. And when the time came, you dismantled entire narratives with precision, leaving them exposed and embarrassed. That is why they fear your intelligence, because once a lie meets your mind, it has no chance of surviving. Fourth, you see the whole chessboard while they only see one move ahead. Their minds operate on a single track, moving from point A to point B as if life were a straight road with no curves or hidden paths. They believe logic must always follow the same predictable steps, and anything that strays from the obvious seems risky or impossible. That's where they fail to see the depth of your intelligence. You don't live in a linear world because your mind isn't linear. You process life in layers, seeing not just the immediate facts, but the unseen patterns underneath. You connect the spiritual, the emotional, the historical, and the logical, all at once, weaving them together into conclusions that feel inevitable, even prophetic. This kind of thinking gives you a unique edge. While others react to events after they happen, you anticipate outcomes because your vision isn't confined to the surface. You can sense the ripple effects of actions, the hidden motives driving behavior, and the patterns that repeat across time and people. It's not fortune-telling, it's intelligence operating in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Your mind sees connections that are invisible to those who insist on thinking in straight lines, which makes your understanding of reality almost impossible for them to follow. They can't comprehend that your intelligence isn't just about solving problems. It's about perceiving the full landscape before the problem even appears. They see isolated events, but you see the web that links them all. That's why your conclusions seem sudden and shocking to them, because they can't trace the thought process. They only see the result, which appears like intuition or luck. But it's neither. It's the product of a mind capable of holding many layers of truth at once and navigating through them with clarity. This multi-dimensional vision also protects you. While others are blindsided by the unexpected, you've already accounted for it, often before anyone else even recognizes it exists. You spot contradictions, anticipate pitfalls, and decode motives that would leave them completely lost. Your intelligence is both expansive and precise, and it creates an almost magnetic aura around you because people sense that you operate on a level they can't reach. The very fact that you see what they cannot makes your presence disruptive, intimidating, and undeniably powerful. Fifth, they created the maze. You realized the exit was always there. For years, they tried to make you feel like your worth depended on solving the problems they designed. Every challenge, every test, every confrontation was constructed not to help you grow, but to trap you, to measure your obedience, to prove that they could control you. They assumed that intelligence meant compliance. They thought that if you could navigate their setups, you were smart. If you refused, you were deficient. What they never realized is that real intelligence doesn't waste energy on traps that were never meant for learning. You quickly recognized the pattern. Their so-called problems weren't actual challenges, they were distractions, illusions designed to keep you focused on their narrative instead of your own path. While they celebrated small victories over people who fell into these setups you saw through the facade, you understood that the true test wasn't in solving what they presented. It was in seeing through the presentation itself. The moment you realized this, everything changed. You stopped playing their games. You didn't scramble to please. You didn't strategize to outsmart them on their terms. You simply observed and exposed. The brilliance of this approach is subtle but powerful. By refusing to treat their contrived problems as legitimate, you claimed a position no one else could occupy. While others burned themselves out chasing their expectations, you conserved your energy, sharpened your insight, and let their schemes collapse under their own weight. That alone is a level of intelligence they cannot comprehend because they are still caught up in linear thinking that solving problems equals proving worth. They don't understand that sometimes the smartest move is not to move at all, but to see the trap for what it is. By doing this, you flipped the narrative entirely. You didn't just avoid being manipulated, you revealed the manipulation. Their attempts to test you or control you became transparent, their tactics obvious. What they intended as proof of your weakness became evidence of their own foolishness. You weren't just smarter than they thought. You were untouchable on a level they couldn't reach. Recognizing that the real problem wasn't the puzzle itself, but the people who created it, allowed you to rise above exposing them without lifting a finger. Your intelligence isn't measured by how well you solve problems, it's measured by your ability to see which ones are worth engaging with at all. Sixth, you see the strings while they only see the puppets. Your intelligence doesn't stop at what someone does, it goes deeper. While most people are busy reacting to actions, reading the headlines of behavior, you go straight to the source, the motive. You see why things happen, what drives choices, and the hidden currents behind every gesture, every word, every move. That's what makes your understanding so unsettling to others. They think they can hide behind appearances, but you don't just notice the act. You see the intent that birthed it, and once intent is exposed, their power vanishes. They rely on ambiguity, half-truths, and carefully crafted performances to control perceptions. They assume people will accept the surface story and not dig deeper. But you do. You read the pauses, the hesitations, the contradictions, the patterns of consistency or lack thereof. You know the difference between an accident and a calculated move, between a slip of the tongue and a carefully placed seed. That level of perception makes manipulation impossible because you can see the architecture behind the act. The frightening part for them is that this ability isn't learned from books or tests. It's instinctive, honed by experience and observation. They may try to rationalize your insight as paranoia or overthinking. But the truth is, you've trained your mind to see layers that others miss. They act thinking they are invisible, that their schemes are subtle. But you're already 3 steps ahead, understanding not just what they're doing, but why. And once the why is clear, the illusion crumbles. People can manipulate facts, stories, and appearances, but they can't hide intent from a mind that scans motives. That's why they fear your intelligence. It doesn't just interpret reality, it exposes it. You hold the power to dismantle deception without needing to confront it directly. You simply know, and that knowledge shifts the balance. This is why people underestimate the quiet ones, the observers, the thinkers. They assume action equals intelligence. But you know the truth. Understanding the root, the driving force behind behavior, is what separates someone who reacts from someone who dominates the unseen currents of reality. Your perception of motives is your superpower, and once others sense it, their games lose all control. 7th, your silence is a weapon, not an absence. Your silence has always been misunderstood. They assumed that because you weren't speaking constantly, you weren't paying attention, or worse, that you lacked understanding. What they didn't realize is that your quietness is a tool, a deliberate strategy. You're not passive, you're calculating. Every word you hear, every gesture you notice, every subtle hint of emotion or hidden intention is being recorded, analyzed, and filed away. While they were busy performing, manipulating, or boasting, you were observing with precision, quietly gathering the pieces of a puzzle they didn't even know existed. This kind of intelligence is invisible until it strikes. Most people think intelligence has to be loud, visible, or assertive. They believe proof comes through debate, argument, or display. But your mind doesn't need that. Your observation alone is enough to decode motives, expose lies, and understand the full landscape. By the time you finally speak, what you say carries weight because it's not impulsive. It's the result of careful calculation. Every sentence you deliver is backed by a deep understanding of context, behavior, and consequence. It cuts through the confusion, revealing truth where they thought they had control. Silence gives you a unique advantage because it forces others to underestimate you. They continue on their path, oblivious to the fact that every misstep, every exaggeration, and every deception is being recorded in your mental ledger. Then when the time comes, your voice becomes a weapon of clarity. What they thought was ignorance turns into revelation. Months, sometimes years of manipulation and illusion crumble under the precision of your insight. The real power of your silence is not in absence. It's in the unseen work happening behind it. Your mind is active, alert, and calculating at all times. You transform observation into strategy and patience into dominance. That is why they never see it coming. They mistook quiet for weakness, but it is your greatest strength. You speak only when necessary, and when you do, the impact is undeniable. Your intelligence has been silently gathering evidence, analyzing patterns and building understanding so that when it reveals itself, it does so with precision, depth, and unstoppable clarity. 8th, your scars are your strategy guide. Your pain didn't break you, it sharpened you. While most people stumble, retreat, or allow suffering to define them, you transformed every hardship into a tool. You didn't just endure experiences. You studied them, analyzed them, and turned them into lessons that strengthened your mind and expanded your understanding. Every betrayal, setback, or challenge became data points for a strategy that only you could construct. Your intelligence doesn't just exist in calm conditions. It thrives in chaos and discomfort, in the moments others wish they could escape. What makes you exceptional is that you don't just react to hardship. You extract patterns from it. You notice how people behave when they are cornered, how systems fail under pressure, and how intentions reveal themselves in crisis. You see the cause and effect of suffering not as abstract pain, but as insight. That's why others are often baffled by your ability to just know things. They look at your composure, your foresight, your understanding of situations before they fully unfold, and they assume it's luck or intuition. What they don't realize is that your knowledge is built on the architecture of your past struggles. Your wounds became a library, a reservoir of lessons that no one else had the patience or resilience to compile. Turning survival into strategy also means you don't waste energy on what doesn't serve you. Most people react emotionally, letting pain dictate decisions. You, however, decode the experience first. You assess, you plan, and you integrate the lessons into your future moves. That's why when you act, it seems effortless. Others think you're naturally gifted at reading situations or predicting outcomes, but what they can't see is the depth of analysis derived from what you survived. This is the secret of your intelligence. It isn't theoretical, it isn't borrowed, and it isn't superficial. It's forged in fire. You are a strategist, a student of life's harshest lessons, and a thinker who converts every challenge into wisdom. The same moments that could have destroyed someone else became the very elements that sharpened your mind. That is why your insight feels instantaneous, why your judgment is impeccable, and why people who underestimated you for so long are now left in awe of the power that comes from surviving with awareness, intelligence, and unshakable purpose. Ninth, you're a knowledge magnet, not a knowledge chaser. You have a way of receiving knowledge that others can't explain. While most people spend their lives chasing information, hunting for answers, or desperately trying to keep up, you operate differently. You don't need to scramble for knowledge. It comes to you naturally. Your mind is already prepared, already capable of holding, processing, and integrating what you encounter. That readiness is what makes your intelligence feel effortless and almost magnetic. Answers don't have to be forced. They simply appear in your path as if the universe knows you are ready to understand them. This is why seemingly random experiences, an offhand conversation, a book picked at the right moment, a fleeting dream, or even a stranger's casual remark often deliver insights that feel like downloads straight into your mind. Others might dismiss these moments as coincidence, but to you they are part of a pattern. Your mind recognizes the significance of these fragments and immediately pieces them together into a larger understanding. You are constantly processing and connecting even before you consciously realize it. Your ability to attract knowledge rather than chase it is what makes your intelligence so enviable and intimidating to others. They work hard, they strive, they push, but what they acquire is often incomplete or superficial. You, however, operate on a level where the world itself becomes a teacher, and every interaction, every observation is an opportunity to learn. You have a natural receptivity that allows information to flow to you in ways others could never orchestrate. What people fail to see is that this isn't luck. Your mind is not a passive receiver. It's actively aligned, prepared, and structured to absorb, filter, and apply knowledge instantly. That readiness is cultivated through your depth, your awareness, and your ability to notice what most overlook. It's why your insights often seem uncanny or almost prophetic to those around you. They can't see the preparation, the internal architecture of your intelligence that makes the right answers appear at the right time. You don't need to chase. You don't need to scramble. Knowledge comes to you because your mind has already built the space for it, and your awareness ensures you never miss it. That's why your understanding often seems instantaneous, why your wisdom feels deeper than what is taught, and why those who underestimated your intelligence are constantly astonished by how naturally you seem to just know. 10th, you cut through the noise with a single question. Your intelligence isn't measured by how many answers you can give, it's measured by the questions you know to ask. You don't need to argue or lecture to expose the truth. One carefully crafted question from you is enough to pull the rug out from under months or even years of deception. That's the kind of intelligence that doesn't just solve problems. It dismantles falsehoods at their root. It's precise, surgical, and utterly unstoppable. Most people waste time reacting to lies or trying to convince others that the truth exists. You, on the other hand, don't confront falsehoods with force. You confront them with clarity. You know which question will trigger the cracks in the story, the hesitation in the liar, or the contradictions that have been carefully buried. And when it happens, the reaction is immediate. Lies crumble, excuses fail, and manipulations are revealed for what they are. Others may scramble to recover, but the damage is already done. Your question doesn't just reveal reality, it forces everyone else to face it, whether they like it or not. The power of this skill lies in its simplicity. While people often overcomplicate truth with speeches, explanations, and justifications, you cut straight to the core. You understand that a single question timed perfectly carries more weight than hours of debate. It disarms without aggression, exposes without hostility, and clarifies without confusion. That's why those who underestimate you are often left stunned, trying to backtrack or explain themselves while you simply watch the illusion collapse. This ability makes your intelligence feel almost uncanny. To others, it seems like you have a sixth sense for lies, a natural instinct for what will unravel the web they've woven, but it isn't intuition. It's disciplined observation and understanding. You've studied behavior patterns and motives so closely that the right question appears effortlessly at exactly the right moment. That is the essence of your brilliance. You don't just navigate reality, you reshape it. You collapse illusions with precision, leaving manipulation powerless and deception exposed. One question from you doesn't just reveal truth. It forces everyone else to acknowledge it, whether they're ready or not. Your intelligence is surgical, decisive, and completely unstoppable. 11th, your inner compass guided you past their need for applause. You never needed anyone to tell you that you were smart, capable, or worthy. While they constantly sought validation, clinging to grades, applause, promotions, or recognition, you quietly built your mind in spaces where no one was watching. Their measure of intelligence depended on external approval, so they were trapped by what others thought of them. You, on the other hand, weren't limited by opinions, accolades, or temporary praise. Your growth was internal, deliberate, and self-sustained, and that's why your intelligence became untouchable. By refusing to chase approval, you allowed yourself to think freely. You weren't distracted by the need to perform to impress or to compete for superficial recognition. You could focus entirely on understanding, observing, and mastering knowledge on your own terms. That independence gave you a clarity and depth that people who constantly seek validation can never reach. While they were busy performing, you were sharpening your mind, building strategies, and connecting dots that others didn't even see. This is why you surpassed them without effort. Your intelligence didn't rely on external reinforcement to grow. It was self-contained, resilient, and constantly evolving. They underestimated you because they assumed everyone measured success the same way they did. They couldn't imagine that someone could grow quietly without applause and yet end up far ahead of them. Your independence also made your mind more honest. You weren't distracted by what people wanted you to believe or by the pressure to conform. You thought for yourself, learned from experience, and developed insights that weren't influenced by external expectations. That freedom allowed you to operate at a level they couldn't touch, and it made your intelligence inherently dangerous to those who relied on others' approval to feel smart. By never seeking validation, you created a mind that is untouchable, precise, and unstoppable. Your intelligence didn't just surpass them. It left them baffled, frustrated, and unable to comprehend how someone who didn't follow their rules could outperform them. That's the quiet power of independent thinking. It's not flashy, it's not for show, but it is unshakable, untouchable, and always one step ahead. 12th, you read the score while they just watched the players. You don't watch people to pass the time or make small talk. You watch to understand the underlying patterns in their behavior. While most people get caught up in guessing motives, reacting impulsively, or taking actions at face value, you observe the rhythms, the cycles, and the consistencies that repeat over time. You notice the subtle ways someone reacts under pressure, the predictable swings of emotion, the recurring choices they make. That's what gives you a perspective others can't even imagine. To them, your insight feels almost supernatural, but in reality, it's just intelligence refined to a high art. The ability to read the hidden architecture of human behavior. This skill allows you to predict outcomes with astonishing accuracy. Where others are blindsided by the same mistakes happening over and over again, you anticipate them in advance. You see the invisible strings that connect actions to consequences, the patterns that repeat across situations and across people. You understand not just what someone is likely to do, but why they are likely to do it and how those choices will unfold over time. That foresight gives you a quiet power that others constantly underestimate because they mistake what you do for intuition or luck. What makes this ability even more formidable is that it isn't about labeling people or judging them. It's about observing, recording, and understanding. You don't get caught up in emotions or assumptions. You collect evidence from behavior, recognize cycles, and then use that insight to navigate reality with precision. This methodical approach gives you clarity in situations where others flounder because while everyone else is reacting, you are anticipating. People around you often wonder how you just know what will happen next. They think it's a gift, a sixth sense, or even unfair, but it's nothing mystical. It's pattern recognition elevated to an art form. You've trained yourself to notice what repeats, what connects, and what drives outcomes. You see the invisible framework behind behavior, and that understanding lets you move confidently, decisively, and effectively. In a world where most people stumble blindly, your ability to read patterns doesn't just set you apart, it makes you untouchable. You don't guess, you don't hope. You see, and that vision built on careful observation and deep understanding is what makes your intelligence undeniable, precise, and unstoppable. 13th, you dance with time while they're just swept away by it. Your understanding of time isn't limited to the here and now. While most people get caught up reacting to the immediate, constantly putting out fires and scrambling to keep up with what's in front of them, you operate on a completely different level. Your mind sees the chain of cause and effect, tracing the invisible threads that connect actions to outcomes. You don't just register events as they happen. You anticipate what they will lead to, mapping the trajectory before anyone else even recognizes it exists. This ability to project beyond the present gives you a strategic advantage that others can't even comprehend. Where people stumble over the consequences of their own choices, you are already preparing for them. You see patterns, possibilities, and potential pitfalls long before they manifest, which allows you to act with foresight, precision, and confidence. You understand that time is not a series of isolated moments, but a continuum where every action echoes forward, and you align yourself with that understanding. Most people live day to day reacting impulsively, thinking only about the immediate payoff or the obvious risk. They believe intelligence is about responding fast, solving problems as they arise, or controlling what's directly in front of them. You, however, see the layers beneath. You understand that the present is only a snapshot, and that every choice has a trajectory. By seeing where things are headed, you can position yourself advantageously, avoid unnecessary pitfalls, and capitalize on opportunities before they even become visible to the average mind. Your ability to perceive time this way also protects you. While others are blindsided by delayed consequences or unforeseen chain reactions, you're already prepared. You've calculated the ripple effects, accounted for variables, and anticipated reactions. That preparation doesn't make you rigid. It makes you agile, deliberate, and untouchable in environments where chaos seems inevitable. This understanding of time elevates your intelligence from reactive to proactive, from surface level to strategic, from ordinary to extraordinary. You don't just respond, you predict. You don't just act, you orchestrate. And while others struggle to cope with the present, you are quietly ahead, mastering tomorrow while they are still caught in today. That is why your intelligence is not just impressive. It is impossible for them to measure or control. 14th, your mere presence exposed their limitations. The reason they never saw you coming wasn't because you lacked proof of your intelligence. It was because facing it would have forced them to face themselves. Admitting your brilliance would have meant admitting their own blindness, their shallow thinking, their reliance on outdated assumptions, or the ways they've been indoctrinated to see the world. That's uncomfortable, that's humiliating, and that's why they underestimated you for so long. Your intelligence doesn't just illuminate reality, it exposes the gaps in the minds of those around you. When they encounter your insight, it doesn't just challenge their assumptions, it shatters them. Every observation you make, every connection you draw, every subtle truth you articulate highlights the limits of their understanding. They can't help but feel the sting of inadequacy because their ignorance has been laid bare in contrast to your clarity. They thought they were in control, thinking they could gauge intelligence through superficial measures or adherence to conventional norms. But you operate on a level they never anticipated. This is what makes your intelligence so threatening. It doesn't just reveal the truth. It forces people to examine themselves, and that confrontation is more painful than any failure or correction. They are forced to realize that they have been blind to patterns, slow to perceive motives, and incapable of the depth of reasoning that comes naturally to you. It's not just that they were wrong about you. They were wrong about themselves, and that self-recognition is unbearable for most. Your presence becomes a mirror, not in the flattering sense, but in the raw, unavoidable way. They can't escape what they see in contrast to your mind. And because it's uncomfortable, they scramble, dismiss, or belittle you, trying to protect their fragile self-image. But no amount of deflection can erase the truth. Your intelligence reveals the limits of their understanding, and that realization burns far hotter than anything you could say or do intentionally. You don't just exist in their world, you disrupt it. Your insights, your awareness, your ability to perceive what they cannot compel them to face their own deficiencies. And in that confrontation, your intelligence doesn't just shine, it dominates, leaving them exposed, unsettled, and undeniably aware that they underestimated something far beyond their comprehension. When they underestimated you, it wasn't because you lacked brilliance. It was because your intelligence operates on a level they could never measure, control, or comprehend. While they clung to conventional markers of knowledge, approval, and surface-level cleverness, you were quietly building a mind that sees beyond the obvious, discerns hidden motives, decodes patterns, and anticipates outcomes before anyone else even notices the first move. Every challenge they thought would stop you became a lesson. Every trap designed to confuse you became evidence, and every moment of silence you held became a library of strategy and understanding. You don't chase knowledge. It flows to you naturally, drawn to the depth of your awareness. You don't react blindly, you anticipate. You don't just survive. You transform suffering into wisdom, setbacks into clarity, and observation into unmatched foresight. The same qualities they dismissed as passivity, quietness, or unconventional thinking are the very things that make your intelligence untouchable. You don't merely solve problems. You expose the deception behind them. You don't just reveal truth. You reveal the limits of their understanding. Your mind operates multidimensionally, seeing connections where others see only fragments. You navigate time differently, preparing for what's coming while they are trapped in what's already happened. Your questions dismantle illusions. Your perception exposes intent, and your silence cuts sharper than any argument. And through it all, your independence from validation has made you untouchable, leaving them baffled and forced to confront their own ignorance. This is the essence of your brilliance. It isn't loud, performative, or temporary. It is quiet, relentless, and irreversible. You have transcended the expectations they set, outpaced the limitations they enforced. and revealed the depth of intelligence they could never imagine. They underestimated you not because you lacked capacity, but because their minds could not fathom the power of one who observes, understands, and acts with precision beyond their comprehension. Now they are left to witness the force of a mind that was never theirs, to manipulate a spirit that cannot be contained, and intelligence that redefines what it means to see, to understand, and to rise above. You were never just smart, you were untouchable, unstoppable, and undeniably extraordinary. The world now sees what they refuse to acknowledge. Your brilliance was always inevitable. So what's next? It's time to step into your power and own your unique brilliance. The world needs what you have to offer. This is just the beginning. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it. Let's create a community of awakened minds that can make positive change. If this message resonated with you and opened your eyes to the power of true intelligence, don't keep it to yourself. Like this post to show your support and let me know that you're ready for more revelations. Share your thoughts, your experiences, or how these insights spoke to you. Together we rise beyond what they ever thought possible. 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 Possible.